The transport ship broke through the clouds of Voroth Prime, and Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below her stretched the Galactic Military Academy, a massive complex of silver towers and training grounds that covered an area larger than most Earth cities. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds trained here. They came as raw recruits and left as officers in the Galactic Defense Fleet. Elena was about to become the first human to walk through those gates. She was not impressive by galactic standards. At 5 feet 6 inches, she barely reached the chest of most species. Her brown skin and dark hair were unremarkable. She had no claws, no armored plates, no natural weapons of any kind. When the transport door opened and she stepped onto the landing platform, several alien cadets turned to look at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open disbelief. A Velish cadet, its blue crystalline body catching the light, leaned toward its companion. "That is the human? I thought they would be larger." Elena heard the comment, but said nothing. She had learned during her months of preparation that most galactic species expected humans to be something more than they appeared. The stories that had spread since first contact painted humanity as survivors of a death world, descendants of apex predators, beings who had clawed their way to sentience through endless struggle. The reality of a small, soft-skinned woman with a polite smile seemed to disappoint everyone. She collected her single bag and followed the signs toward the registration center. The Academy's architecture was designed to intimidate. The ceilings stretched impossibly high. The corridors were wide enough for species 3 times her size. Every surface gleamed with cold efficiency. Elena took it all in with quiet attention, noting exits and pathways out of habit. The registration process took 3 hours. She was scanned, measured, tested, and documented. A medical officer spent 20 minutes examining her with obvious confusion, asking her to repeat basic information about human biology. Yes, she really did need to sleep every day. No, she could not regenerate lost limbs. Yes, her species felt pain through their entire body. The officer made notes with an expression that suggested he was documenting a particularly fragile piece of equipment. Finally, she received her assignment. Training Cohort 7, Barracks Block 9, Senior Instructor Krelvax. The cadet who handed her the documentation paused. "You have been assigned to Instructor Krelvax? Is that a problem?" The cadet, a 4-armed Kryn with scales the color of rust, looked at her for a long moment. "He is called the Breaker. In 40 years of service, he has never failed to break a cadet during the first training cycle. Those he breaks either become the finest officers in the fleet, or they leave the academy and never return." Elena nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me. I am not telling you to frighten you. I am telling you because you should prepare yourself." Krelvax believes that fear is the foundation of combat effectiveness. He finds the thing each cadet fears most, and he forces them to face it until they either master it or shatter. For most species, this is a known quantity. Our fears are documented. Our breaking points are understood. The Kryn paused. For humans, there is almost no data. You are too new to galactic society. He will see you as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To learn how humans break. Elena thanked the cadet again and made her way to Barracks Block 9. The room she had been assigned was small but functional, designed for species that required sleep. She set down her bag, sat on the edge of the narrow bed, and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to feel the weight of what she had taken on. She was alone. She was the first. Everything she did here would shape how the galaxy saw her entire species for generations to come. If she failed, humans might never be given another chance at the academy. If she succeeded, she would open doors that her people had been working toward since first contact. The 5 minutes ended. Elena stood up, straightened her uniform, and went to find her cohort. Training Cohort 7 consisted of 12 cadets from 8 different species. They were gathered in a common room when Elena arrived, and conversation stopped as she entered. She recognized a few species from her studies. The Velish cadet from the landing platform was there, along with the Kryn who had warned her about Krelvax. There was a massive Thornian covered in natural armor plates, a slender Ethrani with fur eyes and translucent skin, and several others she would need time to identify. They looked at her. She looked back. "I am Elena Vasquez," she said. "Human, Earth. I look forward to training with you." The silence stretched. Then the Thornian let out a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. "A human," it said. "I thought the stories were exaggerated. You are even smaller than I expected. I get that a lot. I am Goroth. I was the smallest of my clutch, the weakest. I came to the academy because no one believed I could survive it. If I graduate, I will return home with honor no one can take from me." The Thornian tilted its massive head. "Why are you here, small human?" Elena considered the question. Because someone had to be first, before anyone could respond. The door at the far end of the room slammed open. Every cadet in the room straightened instinctively as Senior Instructor Krelvax entered. He was enormous. Even among the large species Elena had encountered, Krelvax stood out. He was Thornian like Goroth, but larger, older, and covered in scars that spoke of decades of combat and training. His eyes swept across the room with cold assessment, pausing briefly on each cadet before moving on. When his gaze reached Elena, it stopped. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Elena held his stare without flinching, though her heart beat faster. "So," Krelvax said finally. "The human." "Yes, Senior Instructor." He moved closer. The ground seemed to shake slightly with each step. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to crane her neck back to meet his eyes. "I have trained cadets from 37 different species," he said. "I know what makes each of them strong. I know what makes them weak. I know exactly how to find the fear that lives inside them and drag it into the light." He leaned down, his scarred face filling her vision. "But humans are new. Your fears are not documented. Your breaking points are unknown. This is unacceptable." Elena said nothing. "You will help me correct this problem," Krelvax continued. "By the time I am finished with you, I will know exactly how to break a human. This knowledge will be added to the Academy's archives. Future human cadets will benefit from my research." His voice dropped lower. "Or you will wash out in the first cycle, and your species will be marked as unsuitable for military service. Either outcome is acceptable to me." He straightened and addressed the entire room. "Tomorrow, you begin your first evaluation. The fear chambers. Each of you will enter a simulation customized to exploit your species' deepest evolutionary terrors. You will face what you fear most. Those who break will be given one chance to recover and try again. Those who break twice will be removed from my cohort." The cadets stood in rigid silence. Elena could see several of them trembling. "I suggest you spend tonight preparing yourselves," Krelvax said. "Think about what frightens you. Accept that tomorrow you will experience it fully. The only question is whether you will emerge stronger or shattered." He turned and walked toward the door. Just before he left, he paused and looked back at Elena. "Human, what time should you report tomorrow?" Elena met his eyes. "Whatever time you require, Senior Instructor." Something flickered across his face. It might have been surprise. It might have been anticipation. "Oh, 600. Do not be late." He left. The room remained silent for a long moment. "He really does not like you," the Kryn said quietly. Elena shook her head. "No, he does not know me yet. That is different." She looked around at her fellow cadets, seeing the fear in their eyes, the tension in their bodies. "Has anyone eaten?" I think better with food." The question seemed to break some of the tension. A few cadets laughed nervously. Goroth made that rumbling sound again. "The human wants food before she faces the breaker," he said. "I think I am beginning to like you, Elena Vasquez." They went to find the dining hall together. 12 cadets from 8 worlds, none of them knowing what tomorrow would bring. Elena ate her meal slowly, memorizing the layout of the academy, noting which cadets seemed likely to become allies and which would be rivals. And beneath it all, in the quiet part of her mind where she kept the things she did not show others, she wondered what Krelvax would find when he went looking for her fears. She had so many to choose from. The fear chambers were located in the deepest level of the academy, far below the surface of Voroth Prime. Elena and her cohort rode a lift down for nearly 10 minutes, descending through layers of rock and reinforced metal. No one spoke. The air grew colder the deeper they went. The chamber complex was a long corridor lined with identical doors. Each door led to a private simulation room where cadets would face their customized nightmares. Medical staff waited at stations along the walls, ready to intervene if a cadet's vital signs became critical. It was both reassuring and terrifying to know that people had needed that intervention before. Krelvax was waiting for them at the end of the corridor. He stood with his arms folded across his massive chest, watching them approach with cold satisfaction. "You will enter the chambers in alphabetical order by species designation," he announced. "The simulation will run until you either complete it or break." Breaking is defined as complete psychological collapse, loss of coherent thought, inability to continue functioning. His eyes swept across them. Most cadets break within 2 hours. The current record for endurance is 4 hours and 17 minutes, held by a Thornian who later became Fleet Admiral. "I do not expect any of you to approach that record." The first cadet was called forward, a Drethi named Sala, whose species resembled tall insects with delicate wings. She walked toward her assigned chamber with her head held high, but Elena could see her wings trembling. The door closed behind her. Everyone waited. 40 minutes later, Sala emerged. She was shaking so badly that medical staff had to support her. Her wings had crumpled against her back, and she made small clicking sounds that Elena had learned meant distress in her species. But she was coherent. She had not broken. One by one, the cadets entered their chambers. The Athrani lasted an hour before collapsing. A species called the Gorvan made it 90 minutes. Goroth entered his chamber with a defiant roar and emerged 3 hours later, bleeding from where he had clawed at his own armor plates, but still standing. The Kryn cadet, whose name was Tereth, faced a simulation involving parasitic organisms. Elena could hear screaming through the supposedly soundproof walls. Tereth came out after 2 hours, pale and empty-eyed but unbroken. Finally, it was Elena's turn. Krelvax walked with her to her assigned chamber. "I have prepared extensively for you, human. I searched every database I could access for information about your species' fears: darkness, predators, heights, drowning, fire, confined spaces, loss of control, isolation, death of loved ones." He stopped at the door. "I will be watching the entire time. Every reaction will be documented. Every weakness will be cataloged." Elena nodded. "I understand, Senior Instructor. Do you have any questions?" She thought about it. "Will there be a break for water?" Krelvax stared at her for a long moment. Then he opened the door. "Enter." The chamber was completely dark when the door closed behind her. Elena stood still, letting her eyes adjust, though she knew there was nothing to see. The darkness was absolute, the kind that pressed against your eyes and made you doubt whether they were even open. She waited. The first fear came as sound, a growling, somewhere in the darkness, low and hungry. Her heart rate increased automatically, her body responding to millions of years of evolution that associated that sound with danger. She turned toward it, tracking the movement by sound alone. The predator attacked from behind. The simulation was incredibly realistic. She felt impact, felt claws rake across her back, felt pain that her brain interpreted as real even though no physical harm was occurring. She went down, rolled, came up in a defensive crouch. The darkness made it impossible to see what was hunting her. More growls, multiple predators now, circling. Elena forced herself to breathe slowly. She could not see them, so she listened, tracked their movements by the sounds they made. When one attacked, she moved at the last moment, letting it pass by her rather than trying to fight something she could not perceive. The simulation evolved. Fire erupted around her, turning the darkness into blinding light. The predators fled, but now she was surrounded by flames that crept closer with each passing second. Heat pressed against her skin. Smoke filled her lungs. She dropped low, where the air was cleaner, and looked for a path through the fire. There was always a path. The simulation had to have rules, which meant it had solutions. She found a gap and ran through it, her clothes smoking, her skin stinging. On the other side, the ground dropped away. She stood at the edge of a massive cliff, looking down into endless darkness. The fire pressed closer behind her. Elena looked at the drop. She looked at the fire. She jumped. The fall lasted forever. Wind screamed past her. Her stomach rose into her throat. Every instinct screamed that she was going to die, that she should have stayed with the fire, that this was a mistake. She hit water. Cold water that closed over her head and pulled her down. She could not tell which way was up. Her lungs burned. Her body demanded that she breathe, even though there was nothing but water around her. She stopped fighting, let herself go limp, felt which way her body naturally wanted to rise. Then she swam in that direction. She broke the surface and gasped for air. A moment later, the walls started closing in. The simulation shifted again. She was no longer in water, but in a small box, barely large enough to contain her body. The walls pressed against her from all sides. The ceiling lowered slowly, centimeter by centimeter. She would be crushed. There was no escape. Elena controlled her breathing, counted her heartbeats. The walls touched her shoulders, her hips. The ceiling pressed against the top of her head. She waited. The walls stopped moving. She was not dead. This was a simulation. The goal was to make her break, not to actually kill her. As long as she remained functional, the simulation would continue. As long as she kept thinking, kept breathing, kept refusing to collapse, she would survive. The box vanished. She stood in a familiar room, her childhood bedroom on Earth. Her mother sat on the bed, looking at her with sad eyes. "Elena," her mother said, "I'm so disappointed in you. This was different. This was not primal fear. This was personal." Elena felt something twist in her chest. "You left us," her mother continued. "You went so far away. And now you're going to fail. Everyone will know. Everyone will see that you weren't good enough." Elena's eyes burned. "This isn't real, isn't it? Everything you fear is real. This is what you carry inside you. The fear that you're not enough, that you never were." More figures appeared. Her father, her sister, friends from her past, teachers and mentors. They surrounded her, and their voices blended together into a chorus of disappointment and rejection. "You were never special. You were just desperate. Did you really think you could represent all of humanity? They're going to send you home in disgrace. We'll have to pretend we don't know you." Elena sank to her knees. Tears ran down her face. She wanted it to stop. She wanted to cover her ears and curl up and disappear. But she did not break. She knelt there, crying, surrounded by the voices of everyone she had ever wanted to make proud. And she endured. The tears were real. The pain was real. But she did not lose the ability to think. She did not become incoherent. She did not stop functioning. Outside the chamber, Krelvax watched the monitors with growing disbelief. The human stress indicators were extreme. Her emotional response was off the scale. By every measurement, she should have broken hours ago. But she kept going. He escalated the simulation, added more elements, combined fears that should have been overwhelming. The human experienced them all. She screamed, she wept, she begged for it to stop, and then she stopped begging. Around the 4-hour mark, something changed. The human's vital signs began to stabilize even as the simulation intensified. Her emotional responses became more controlled. She stopped simply reacting and started analyzing. When fire appeared, she immediately mapped escape routes. When predators circled, she identified defensible positions. When the walls closed in, she calculated the rate of compression and estimated how long she had before actual danger. She was adapting. Other instructors had gathered to watch. This was unprecedented. A cadet was not supposed to adapt to the fear chamber. They were supposed to either break or survive. The human was doing something else entirely. At the 5-hour mark, Krelvax made a decision. He would push beyond standard parameters. He had special authorization for the human, and he intended to use it. The simulation became something that had never been tested on any cadet before. Multiple fears layered simultaneously. Pain feedback increased to maximum legal limits. Duration extended beyond any previous session. Elena experienced all of it. And still, she did not break. At 6 hours, Krelvax ended the simulation. He had no choice. The human's body was approaching physical limits even though her mind remained functional. He would not risk permanent damage to Academy property. The chamber door opened. Elena walked out on unsteady legs. Her face was streaked with tears. Her hands trembled. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 6 hours. But she stood at attention and faced Krelvax directly. "Did I pass, senior instructor?" Krelvax looked at her for a long moment. Around them, other instructors exchanged glances. Medical staff stood ready to intervene. The weeks following Elena's first fear chamber session became something that no one at the academy had experienced before. Krulvax requested special dispensation from the commandant to continue studying the human cadet. His request was granted without hesitation. The academy's leadership was just as curious as he was. Elena became an unofficial research subject while maintaining her regular cadet duties. She attended the same classes as her cohort. She participated in the same physical training. She ate in the same dining hall and slept in the same barracks. But several times each week, she would receive a summons to report to the fear chambers for additional sessions. Her cohort watched this happen with a mixture of concern and fascination. "He is trying to destroy you," Tereth said one evening. The Kryn had become something like a friend to Elena over the past weeks. No cadet has ever been subjected to this many chamber sessions. "He is looking for your breaking point," Elena shrugged. She was tired. She was always tired now. The sessions left her drained in ways that sleep could not fully repair. But she refused to show weakness. "Let him look. Why do you not request a transfer? Other cohorts would accept you. Other instructors would be less obsessive. Because that would prove him right." Elena looked at her friend with exhausted eyes. "He thinks humans are fragile, that we break easily. If I run away, that becomes the official record. The first human at the academy fled from a difficult instructor. That cannot be the story." Gorath, who had been listening nearby, made his rumbling sound of agreement. "The small human has Thornian spirit. I respect this." "I do not want respect," Elena said. "I want to survive long enough to graduate. Then the next human who comes here will have an easier path." She did not mention the other thing, the thing she had noticed during her sessions. Each time she entered the fear chamber, she understood herself a little better. Each fear she faced taught her something about who she was and what she was capable of enduring. It was brutal education, but it was education nonetheless. Krulvax was trying to break her. Instead, he was making her stronger. The instructor himself was experiencing something he had never felt before: obsession. He spent his nights reviewing footage from Elena's sessions, analyzing every reaction, every physiological response. He consulted databases across the galaxy for information about human psychology. What he found disturbed him. Humans had been exposing themselves to artificial fear for thousands of years. They called them horror stories, ghost tales, frightening entertainments. They had created entire industries dedicated to making themselves afraid. Haunted houses, dangerous sports, films designed to trigger terror responses. They sought out fear as recreation. This made no sense to Krulvax. Fear was a warning system. It existed to keep organisms alive. No rational species would deliberately trigger their own fear responses for entertainment. And yet humans did exactly that, regularly and enthusiastically. He began to suspect that human psychology operated on principles fundamentally different from every other species he had studied. Fear, for them, was not simply something to overcome or avoid. It was something they had learned to use. The next session he designed was his most sophisticated yet. He combined elements from every previous test, layering fears on top of fears, creating scenarios that should have been impossible to navigate. He set the duration for 12 hours, the maximum his special authorization allowed. Ellen arrived at 0600. As always, she looked tired but determined. Krulvax explained the parameters of the session, watching her face for any sign of the panic he expected to see. 12 hours, she repeated. That is a long time. Yes, this will be your final evaluation. Pass this, and I will have no more reason to continue testing you. Elena nodded slowly. And if I fail, then I will have the data I need about human breaking points. Your sacrifice will benefit future cadets of your species. She considered this for a moment. I have a question, Senior Instructor. Ask, when I complete this session, will you acknowledge that humans are suitable for military service? Not just me. All humans. Krulvax studied her. She was bargaining, negotiating, even now, facing 12 hours of psychological torture. She was thinking about her people rather than herself. Complete the session without breaking, he said, and I will make that recommendation personally. Elena extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment, Krulvax took it. Her grip was firm despite the slight tremor he could feel beneath her skin. "Then let us begin," she said. The Academy's senior staff gathered in the observation room. Word had spread about the unusual testing of the human cadet, and everyone wanted to see how it ended. Screens showed multiple angles of the chamber. Monitors displayed Elena's vital signs. Recording equipment captured everything for the archives. Elena entered the chamber, the door sealed behind her. The session began. The first hour was familiar. Darkness, predators, fire, water, confined spaces. Elena navigated each fear with the efficiency she had developed over weeks of practice. Her heart rate increased, her stress hormones spiked, but she remained functional. The second hour introduced new elements: social fears, public humiliation, failure in front of crowds. Elena's face flushed with shame, but she kept moving. The third hour brought physical threats, simulated pain that felt completely real, injuries that her brain interpreted as genuine. Elena screamed, but she did not stop thinking. Hours 4 through 6 combined everything, overlapping fears that demanded simultaneous responses. Elena had to escape predators while navigating fire, while managing claustrophobia, while processing the voices of disappointed loved ones. She wept. She bled from where she had bitten her own lip, but she did not break. In the observation room, the watchers had grown quiet. Some had stopped pretending to be professional and were simply staring at the screens with open amazement. "How is she doing this?" one instructor whispered. Krelvax did not answer. He was focused entirely on the monitors, watching for the moment when the human would finally collapse. R7, R8. Elena's body was reaching its limits. She had not eaten or drunk anything. Her muscles were failing. Her mind was foggy with exhaustion, and yet she continued. Then, in the 8th hour, something changed. Elena stopped merely surviving the fears. She stopped treating them as obstacles to navigate. Instead, she began studying them, analyzing them, taking them apart. When a new threat appeared, she did not simply react. She observed. She noted the patterns. She predicted what would come next and positioned herself accordingly. She was treating the fear chamber like a puzzle, like a game. Krelvax leaned forward. "What is she doing?" On the screen, Elena had cornered one of the simulated predators. Instead of fleeing from it, she was examining it, testing its responses, learning how the simulation had programmed it to behave. Then she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had found the solution to a problem that had tormented them. The smile of a predator who had finally understood its prey. For the remaining hours, Elena did not simply survive the fear chamber. She hunted through it. She identified the algorithms that generated threats and exploited their weaknesses. She found the boundaries of the simulation and pressed against them. She stopped being a victim of her fears and became something else entirely. The footage from those final hours would later be classified at the highest levels, not because Elena failed, but because of what she demonstrated. A human being, exhausted, beyond measure, afraid beyond description, had somehow found a way to enjoy the challenge of facing her own nightmares. At R12, the simulation ended. Elena stood in the center of the now empty chamber, swaying on her feet but still upright, still conscious, still coherent. The door opened. Krelvax entered alone. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The massive Thornian instructor and the small human cadet, who had just accomplished something unprecedented in the history of the Academy. "You did not break," Krelvax said. "No, senior instructor. You should have. Every measurement says you should have. Your fear responses were genuine. Your pain was real. By every standard I know. You should have collapsed hours ago." Elena swayed slightly. "May I sit down?" Krelvax gestured permission. Elena sat heavily on the floor, her legs finally giving out. "I need to understand," Krelvax said. He lowered himself to her level, bringing his scarred face close to hers. "What are humans? How did you do this?" Elena looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I think we need to have a conversation, senior instructor. A real one. But I need water first, and possibly food, and definitely sleep." Krelvax studied her for another moment. Then he did something he had not done in 40 years of service. He helped a cadet to their feet, rest, he said. Recover, and then we will talk. I have many questions. Elena leaned on him briefly for support. I have some answers, but I do not think you are going to like them. She was right about that. But neither of them knew yet just how much the answers would change everything. 3 days after the 12-hour session, Elena received a summons. Not to the fear chambers this time, but to Krelvax's private office. She arrived clean, rested, and curious about what would happen next. The office was sparse. A desk made from dark metal, a few displays showing training statistics, a single window looking out over the Academy's training grounds. Krelvax sat behind the desk, his massive form barely fitting in the reinforced chair. Sit, he said. Elena sat. I have spent 3 days reviewing the footage from your sessions, Krelvax began. I have consulted with experts in psychology from 7 different species. I have searched every database I can access for explanations. He paused. I still do not understand what you are. Elena considered her response carefully. May I speak freely, Senior Instructor? That is why you are here. You have been trying to teach me fear, Elena said. But you cannot teach a human to fear. We already know how. We have always known. Fear is not our weakness. It is the oldest thing we have. Krelvax's eyes narrowed. Explain. Elena leaned forward. Humans evolved as persistence predators on a world that tried to kill us constantly. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. We could not outrun the things that hunted us. We could not overpower the things we needed to eat. So we developed something else, endurance. Not just physical endurance, though we have that too. Psychological endurance. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the training grounds below. Our ancestors did not survive by avoiding fear. They survived by learning to function while afraid. A human who froze when facing a predator died. A human who could think through their fear, plan through their fear, act through their fear, survived to have children. Over to 100,000 years, we bred for the ability to coexist with terror. Krelvax processed this. You are saying fear does not impair human function. No. Fear absolutely impairs human function. We experience it fully. Our hearts race. Our hands shake. Our minds scream at us to run. Elena turned back to face him. But we learn to override it, to keep thinking even when every instinct tells us to stop. Fear for us is not a breaking point. It is a starting point. It is the place where we begin to really think. The instructor was silent for a long moment. In the final hours of your session, you stopped fleeing from the fears. You began studying them, hunting them. I saw you smile. Yes. Why? Elena returned to her seat. Because I finally understood what my fear was telling me. It was not saying you will die. It was saying pay attention. This is important. Figure this out. My ancestors felt that same fear when they faced animals that could kill them. They used it to sharpen their focus, to analyze threats, to find solutions. I did the same thing in your chamber. Krelvax leaned back in his chair. The metal groaned under his weight. This explains much about human history. Your species has repeatedly done things that should have been impossible, survived conditions that should have killed you, achieved victories that should have been defeats. We have a saying, Elena said. Humans are at their best when things are at their worst. When there is no hope, we find hope. When there is no path forward, we make one. Not because we are not afraid, because being afraid is where we live. We are comfortable there in ways other species cannot understand, comfortable with fear. Krelvax spoke the words as if testing them. This is deeply disturbing. I know. You have told me something else as well. The instructor's voice grew quieter. You have told me that my entire methodology for training humans is useless. Fear-based conditioning will not work on your species. It might actually make you stronger. Elena nodded. I believe that is correct. Then how should humans be trained? I do not know. I am just a cadet. She paused. But I know that my people become the best versions of themselves when we have something to protect. Give a human something to love, something to defend, and we will walk through fire to preserve it. That is the heart of what we are. Not survivors of fear. Protectors despite fear. Krelvax sat with this information for a long time. Elena waited. Finally, he spoke. I have been an instructor for 40 years. I have trained thousands of cadets. I thought I understood how minds work under pressure, how beings break and how they endure. He met her eyes. You have shown me that I know nothing about your species. And if I know nothing about you, then neither does anyone else in the galaxy. Is that a problem? It is a significant concern. He stood and walked to the window. The psychological warfare tactics used by the Galactic Defense Fleet are based on universal principles of fear response, terror campaigns, intimidation strategies, breaking enemy morale through carefully applied psychological pressure. If humans are immune to these methods, he trailed off. Elena understood what he was not saying. You are wondering what would happen if humans ever became enemies instead of allies. Yes, I cannot speak for my species, but I can tell you what I believe. She stood and joined him at the window. Humans do not want to be your enemies. We have spent our entire existence fighting for survival. Now that we have found others in the galaxy, we want to belong, to build something together. We would rather protect than destroy. Pretty words. But history across every species shows that intentions change. Allies become enemies. Peace becomes war. Then let us make sure that never happens. Elena looked up at him. Train more humans. Let us prove ourselves. Let us show what we can do when we work alongside other species instead of against them. I think you will find that humans with something to believe in are the most loyal allies you could ask for. Krelvax was quiet for a moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are negotiating with me again, using logic and emotion together, appealing to both my professional concerns and my personal instincts. Is it working? Perhaps. He turned from the window. I will make the recommendation I promised. Humans are suitable for military service, but I will add a personal note to my report. I will recommend that humans never be placed in positions where they might become adversaries to the Alliance. The risk is too great. Elena nodded. That seems fair. One more thing. Krelvax moved to his desk and picked up a data chip. This contains all footage from your sessions, every test, every hour. It has been classified at the highest level by order of the Commandant. Classified. Why? Because of what you showed us in the final hours of your last session. You did not just survive fear. You mastered it. You turned it into a tool. And when you smiled, he paused. When you smiled, you showed us that a human in the grip of terror is not a victim. They are a predator who has finally found worthy prey. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. I did not think of it that way. No, you would not. It is natural to you. But to everyone who watched that footage, it was deeply unsettling. The decision was made to bury the recording rather than risk what might happen. If it became widely known, what might happen? Krelvax set down the chip. Fear, panic, a galaxy full of species suddenly realizing that the soft, small, fragile humans they have been patronizing are something else entirely. Something they have no defenses against. He looked at her with an expression she could not read. You are the first human at this academy. You will not be the last, but the others who come after you will not face what you faced. They will be trained according to methods developed specifically for your species, and the footage from your sessions will remain buried forever. Elena thought about this. I understand, do you? I am telling you that what you accomplished here will be erased. No record will exist of what you did. You will receive no recognition. I did not come here for recognition. I came here to open a door. If the door is now open, that is enough. Krelvax studied her for a long moment. You are a remarkable being, Elena Vasquez. I began this process trying to find your breaking point. Instead, I found something I did not expect. What? Respect. He extended his massive hand in the human gesture she had shown him weeks ago. You have earned something few cadets ever receive from me. My genuine admiration. Elena took his hand. The size difference was almost comical, but the gesture was sincere. What happens now? She asked. Now you return to your cohort. You complete your training. You graduate as an officer of the Galactic Defense Fleet. He paused. And then, if I am not mistaken, you will find yourself recruited for duties that require someone who can function in situations that would break anyone else. That sounds lonely, perhaps, but it also sounds like exactly the kind of challenge a human would thrive in. He released her hand. Dismissed, cadet. I believe you have training to complete. Elena turned toward the door. Just before she left, she looked back. Thank you, senior instructor, for pushing me, for making me face what I feared. You are thanking me for trying to break you? I am thanking you for proving that you could not." She smiled, and there was something in that smile that reminded him of the footage they had buried. "That knowledge is worth more than you know." She left. Kralvax stood alone in his office, thinking about everything he had learned. Then he sat down at his desk and began composing a message. Not to the Commandant, to Galactic Intelligence. There were people who needed to know about what he had discovered, and there was a cadet who would soon receive an offer she might find interesting. 1 year had passed since Elena Vasquez became the first human to graduate from the Galactic Military Academy. According to official records, she had washed out during her first training cycle due to psychological unsuitability. She had returned to Earth in disgrace. Another failed experiment in human integration with galactic society. The official records, of course, were lies. Elena stood at the viewport of a small station orbiting a gas giant on the edge of civilized space. Behind her, representatives of galactic intelligence waited with patient expressions that did not match the tension in their bodies. "You understand the mission parameters?" asked senior handler Keth, a Velish whose crystalline form flickered with barely contained nervousness. "I understand them. The target is a facility operated by the Collective of Broken Minds. They specialize in psychological warfare and torture. They break prisoners for information, then sell what remains to the highest bidder. Our operatives have failed to infiltrate them 7 times. The psychological pressure is simply too great for any species we have sent." Elena continued looking out at the swirling colors of the gas giant. "And you think I can succeed where others failed? We think you are our best option." Keth moved closer, lowering their voice even though the room was secure. "The footage from your academy sessions was classified, but those of us who needed to know were shown selected portions. We understand what you are capable of enduring. What I am capable of enduring and what I am willing to endure are different things. Yes, which is why we are not ordering you. We are asking." Keth paused. "You would be going in alone. Deep cover. The extraction window would be extremely narrow. If you miss it, we cannot help you." Elena finally turned from the viewport. "And if I succeed, then you will have saved dozens of prisoners from fates worse than death. You will have gathered intelligence that could cripple the Collective's operations for years. And you will have proven, once again, that humans can do things other species cannot." She was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and Keth felt a chill run through their crystalline matrix. That smile was in the classified footage. The smile of someone who found challenge where others found only terror. "I will need entertainment media from Earth," Elena said. "Books, films, games, something to occupy my mind during the difficult parts." Keth blinked. "Entertainment media. For a deep cover infiltration of a psychological torture facility. Yes, my people have been training for situations like this. Since we first learned to tell stories around fires. We just did not know it at the time." Elena walked past them toward the door. "Prepare the mission package. I will leave within the week, far across the galaxy, on Voroth Prime." Kralvax stood before a small group of cadets in a secure training facility. These were not regular academy students. They were a hand-picked selection from 12 different species, chosen for a program that did not officially exist. "You have been selected for specialized training," Kralvax told them. "What I will teach you goes against everything you have been taught about fear. You will learn to function within it rather than despite it. You will learn to use it as fuel rather than viewing it as an obstacle." A young Thornian raised their hand. "Senior Instructor, this sounds like what human operatives are rumored to do. But we are not human. No, you are not. Which is why this training will be difficult in ways you cannot imagine. Humans develop these capabilities over to 100,000 years of evolution. You will attempt to learn them in 2 years." Kralvax paused. "Some of you will fail. Some of you may be permanently damaged. But those who succeed will become something new. Something the galaxy has never seen. Why are you teaching us this?" Another cadet asked. "If humans can already do it naturally, why train other species?" Kralvax thought about Elena Vasquez, about the footage that had been buried, about the reports that crossed his desk from galactic intelligence, coded documents describing impossible missions completed by human operatives who functioned in conditions that drove every other species mad. "Because humans are few," he said finally, "and the galaxy is large. There will always be more nightmares than there are humans to face them. We need others who can walk in darkness and not lose themselves. He did not mention the other reason, the one that kept him awake some nights. The galaxy had welcomed humans as allies, but they were allies with a capability that no other species possessed. If that balance ever shifted, if humans ever decided to use their resilience against the Alliance rather than for it, there needed to be others who could meet them on equal terms. It was not that he distrusted humans. He had met Elena. He had seen the genuine desire to protect, to build, to belong that burned in her. But 40 years as an instructor had taught him that intentions change, and the wise prepared for all possibilities. The cadets filed out to begin their first session. Krelvax watched them go, hoping that they would never have to use what he taught them against the species that had inspired it. On the edge of known space, Elena's transport dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Ahead lay the facility operated by the collective of broken minds, a station designed to strip away everything that made a being themselves, leaving only raw information to be extracted and sold. Elena reviewed her cover identity one last time. She was a smuggler captured transporting illegal goods. Her background would not withstand deep investigation, but she did not intend to be there long enough for that to matter. Get in, locate the prisoners, transmit coordinates for the extraction team. Get out, simple, except for the part where she would have to endure whatever the collective did to new rivals. Without revealing her true nature, the station grew larger in the viewport. Elena felt the familiar quickening of her heartbeat, the slight tremor in her hands, fear. Her old companion, the friend who had walked beside her species since before they were human. Hello again, she whispered. She thought about her ancestors, the ones who had faced predators with nothing but sticks and determination, the ones who had crossed oceans in wooden boats, not knowing if they would find land on the other side, the ones who had looked up at the stars and decided, against all reason, that they would find a way to reach them. Those ancestors had been afraid, every single one of them. But they had done what needed to be done anyway, because that was what humans did. They felt the fear, acknowledged it, and then used it to sharpen their focus and steel their resolve. The transport docked. Elena stood, straightened her worn smuggler's clothes, and prepared to walk into the nightmare. She was still smiling. Behind her, secure in a hidden compartment, a small data unit contained thousands of hours of Earth entertainment, horror movies, thriller novels, survival games, the collected wisdom of a species that had spent its entire existence learning to face what scared them and emerge stronger. The collective of broken minds thought they understood fear. They thought they could use it to destroy anyone. They had never met a human. And when Elena Vasquez walked out of their facility 3 weeks later, leading 17 rescued prisoners to the extraction point, they understood something that Krelvax had learned the hard way. Fear was not humanity's weakness. It was their oldest friend, and they had learned, long ago, how to make it work for them. The Academy had buried the footage of what Elena could do, but they could not bury the truth. Humans were not afraid of fear. They were its masters,